In the bustling heart of Chicago, where skyscrapers kissed the sky and the hustle of daily life was ever present, Judge Emily Roberts had earned a reputation as one of the most formidable judges in America. Known widely as the Iron Gavel, her courtroom was a place where emotions were checked at the door and strict adherence to the law was the only expectation. For over 23 years, Emily had presided over a myriad of cases with unwavering discipline. Defense attorneys eyed her warily, while prosecutors knew that in her court, justice was a fierce beast tracked by the precise workings of the law. Though respected by her peers, the toll of her role had carved deep lines of resolve on her face, frequently masking a heart that had grown accustomed to delivering harsh sentences without a flicker of empathy. But on an unusually crisp Tuesday morning in October, as golden leaves danced in the autumn breeze outside the courthouse, Emily sensed a profound shift in the air, an unseen weight that pressed down heavily upon her spirit. The large windows framed the mahogany benches, which ordinarily hosted anxious families waiting anxiously for their loved ones' fates. Today, however, a palpable tension filled the room, making even the seasoned court officers shift nervously. Having spent a restless night reviewing a case file that still gnawed at her conscience, Emily took a moment to sip her now-cold coffee as she gazed out at the city waking below her. Despite her meticulous preparation for the day, this particular case was different, emotionally charged and demanding something deeper than the black-and-white justice she had always presided over. "Judge Roberts, they're ready for you in the courtroom," came the soft voice of her clerk, breaking through her reverie. Nodding absently, she straightened her black robes, glancing one last time in the mirror behind her desk. The reflection staring back at her was composed and professional, yet the uncertainty lurking behind her eyes hinted at an internal struggle she hadn't faced in years. As she entered her courtroom, the typical sounds faded into an unsettling silence. The bailiff called for all to rise, an ingrained ritual that invoked respect, but today felt more ceremonial than ever. As Emily took her seat behind the imposing bench, her gaze locked onto the defendant's table. There, in orange prison attire, sat a man named Marcus Taylor. His presence seemed to fill the court, contrasting sharply against the shadows of despair that enveloped the room. While his file bore the grim realities of a troubled past, his posture radiated a dignity that caught Emily's attention. Marcus's journey had been a tumultuous one. Raised in the brutal streets of Chicago, he had faced choices that many could scarcely comprehend. Hours before his execution, Marcus's fate rested in Emily's hands. As the proceedings commenced, she observed him with unusual scrutiny. Most defendants in his position exuded anger or despair, yet Marcus appeared almost serene. His eyes reflected clarity rather than fear, and when they met hers, they conveyed an unsettling acceptance. It challenged everything Emily thought she understood about her role as a judge. As the court moved briskly through formalities, charges read, the verdict entered, Emily felt herself drawn into Marcus's quiet intensity, searching his face for some sign of defiance or regret. However, when Jessica Reyes, Marcus's public defender, stood to request permission for her client to address the court, Emily felt an unexpected jolt of apprehension. Typically, the last words spoken by defendants were desperate pleas for mercy or claims of innocence, but there was something in Jessica's voice that hinted this would be different. Granting the request, Emily felt a shift, a moment in time that held the potential to redefine everything. Marcus rose slowly, the chains of his shackles echoing like clock hands marking the time until his execution. The courtroom fell into a deep silence, the air thick with anticipation. Looking directly at Emily, he cleared his throat, his voice steady and resonant. "Your Honor," he began, "I know that in mere hours I will pay the ultimate price for my actions, and I accept that. I am not here to plead for mercy or to claim innocence. What I did was undeniably wrong, and I have spent every day since living with that unbearable reality." As he spoke, Emily felt a flicker of compassion pierce through her well-constructed armor. This wasn't a man attempting to evade accountability. This was a father confronting his fate head-on. She leaned slightly forward, compelled by an unseen force, gripping the edge of her bench as he continued. "What I wish to ask for is not for myself, but for someone who deserves more than what I've given them. A chance for my daughter to know who her father is, in all his flaws, in all his regret. I want to leave her a message, something she can hold on to when she's older. A message that shows I loved her, even when my actions said otherwise." The weight of his request hung in the air, an unexpected vulnerability pouring into the courtroom. Emily's heart raced. She had never encountered a moment that simultaneously forced her to grapple with the hard lines of the law and the soft nuances of humanity. How could she grant this request? What would it mean for her as a judge? And what about the victims? As those thoughts raced through her, she felt the room shift around her. Eyes turned to the victim's family, where the sorrow was palpable. The courtroom had transformed from a place of condemnation to a fragile space where humanity lay bare. Marcus held up a worn photograph, trembling slightly as he revealed it to the courtroom. "This is my daughter Lily," he said, his voice breaking momentarily before regaining its composure. "She's 7 years old now, but this picture was taken on her 5th birthday. I haven't seen her since. I respect her mother's decision to keep me away, but if there's any part of me that can be a father for just a moment longer, I want to do this for her. Please let me record a message, something that will help her understand who I am beyond this." At that moment, Emily experienced a profound internal conflict. She felt the walls of her judicial authority stretching uncomfortably. The echo chamber of her career surged within her, questioning the morality of denying a man the chance to communicate with his child. A small act of love amid impending tragedy. "Mr. Taylor," she began cautiously, her voice steady yet laced with emotion, "you understand that your execution is scheduled for tonight at 8 p.m. The state has established protocols that cannot be altered without considerable legal grounds. However, I need you to explain to me why I should allow this unusual request." Marcus met her gaze, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pain and hope. "Your Honor, I'm not asking for delays or a change in the execution schedule. All I need is 20 minutes, maybe 30. I want my daughter to hear that she was always loved, despite my actions. It's not about me. It's about leaving her a part of me, so she never doubts my love for her." The words struck Emily, resonating against memories she had buried long ago, the tender moments she had shared with her own father. She thought about how she'd felt after he had passed, the unanswered questions lingering in her heart. Suddenly, she was grappling not just with the law, but with something universal, what it meant to be a parent, to love and to lose. As the room fell silent once more, she felt the weight of the victim's family bearing down upon her decision. The grief etched on the faces of the families who had been collateral damage in Marcus's choices called her deeper into contemplation. Then, unexpectedly, Mrs. Collins, the victim's mother, stood up, her hands trembling as she spoke. "Your Honor," she began, her voice humid with emotion, "my son James was full of potential. He was a father too, and he left behind a daughter who will never know him. If Mr. Taylor wants to leave something for his daughter, then I can't stand in the way of that. Perhaps it might allow us all a small measure of healing." As murmurs filled the courtroom, Emily realized she was standing on a thin line between justice and mercy. It was a space she had never intended to occupy, one that demanded a new understanding of law's pursuit. Looking into Marcus's earnest eyes, she weighed the stakes. The order of her court had long been defined by the language of punishment, but perhaps, in this moment, justice could coexist with empathy. As she considered the implications, she recognized that denying the request might mean further isolation for a child who would one day seek understanding about her father. With a measured breath, Emily took a stand. "Mr. Taylor, I will grant your request under the understanding that this is an extraordinary circumstance. The recording will take place at the correctional facility under strict supervision, and it must not delay any part of this evening's schedule." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor. You've given me a chance to be a father one last time." Across the courtroom, the emotional landscape shifted once more. District Attorney Richard Moore rose in objection, his voice sharp and formal. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The execution schedule must not be compromised for emotional appeals." Emily raised a hand, silencing him. "Mr. Moore, I appreciate your concerns, but sometimes justice requires us to step beyond rigid protocols. This is about compassion as much as it is about judgment. I believe this recording will not disrupt the legal process nor the faith that the victims' families have in our justice system." As the courtroom buzzed with conversation, her words etched a new path through legal history. She glanced around at the attendees, witnessing the myriad reflections of relief, anguish, and hope that mingled in the air. The afternoon trudged on toward the recording session, each minute weighing heavily as Emily prepared herself for what came next. She knew the decision she had made would reverberate throughout the legal community, sparking debates over justice, compassion, and the roles of judges in uncertain times. When the hour arrived, Marcus stood once more in the courtroom, a different man from the one who had entered that morning. His earlier serenity had morphed into a profound calm, a man who was not merely awaiting his fate, but had found purpose beyond it. As he prepared to record his message, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, knowing how this moment would shape so many lives. The flicker of humanity intertwined with the cold clinicality of law manifested within her, calling her to recognize the complexities of relationships fractured by tragedy. "Mr. Taylor, you have 30 minutes to leave this message for your daughter," Emily announced, her voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability as she gestured for him to proceed. Marcus nodded, clutching the photograph of Lily to his chest. "Thank you, Your Honor. I will make every moment count." With tears streaming down his face, he stepped into a small, separate room, the door closing behind him. In the silence that followed, Emily sat down heavily, the enormity of the moment engulfing her. As Marcus's voice filled the recording space with words of love, explanations, and raw emotion, Emily understood she was witnessing a profound act of connectivity, a father's wish to bridge the chasm of his choices with a message of hope for the future. When he finished, the weight of both tragedy and transformation hung in the air, shaping the culmination of every decision made in that courtroom. Emily knew this moment would forever change her, an awakening to the delicate interplay between justice and the inherent complexity of the human experience. That evening, with the clock ticking down toward 8 p.m., Judge Emily Roberts prepared to carry out her final duty as she wrestled with the truth that had emerged that day. Sometimes, true justice wasn't solely about punishment or strict adherence to law. It was also about compassion and recognizing the shared humanity that lay at the heart of every case. As she delivered her ruling, the courtroom was filled with an understanding far deeper than the judgment itself. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, regret, and the unbreakable bonds between a parent and child, even in the face of unfathomable circumstances. And so, the gavel fell, not just to mark the end of a trial, but to herald a new perspective on justice shaped by a moment of humanity, forever altering the lives of all who had gathered that day in a small Chicago courtroom.